Hi, my name is Lisa Cole, and I'm the CMO of 2X. You may not have heard of 2X before. We are essentially a global leading provider in B2B marketing managed services. Effectively, we help enterprise companies scale marketing in such a way that enables them to scale their impact without scaling overhead and operational burden. And what that basically means is we help CMOs with secure the right expertise at the right time, the right capacity at the right cost um, through a subscription model. So with that, I have the pleasure of building and scaling a marketing function for 2X. And as a new CMO, I'm sitting here with my new CFO during our first budget planning process. And I thought you might all be interested in this conversation as we're going to talk about things like, how should we communicate? What does reporting look like? How do we make sure that we stay aligned on strategic priorities? How would my CFO like for me to report on marketing's impact? What are the things I could do that could help kind of foster a strong working relationship between us? And then how do we manage difficult times? So, for example, if there's a shift in priorities and we need to invest in a way to support the business in that shift, how would he like me to approach him if that requires resources that I currently don't have? I thought those topics might be interesting to you all, and so I've convinced him to join us today and be okay with me recording this conversation and sharing it with the world. Brandon, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, and thanks for doing this, Lisa. I know the CFO and the CMO are often cats and dogs within the organization, and in a lot of my career, I've been the finance guy in a marketing organization. I started my career in an e-commerce agency back in the Wild West of e-commerce, and so I've sort of always been in the hen house from a finance point of view, and so I've had a unique perspective on the finance and marketing relationship. But it's great to be here. Brandon Sullivan, the CFO of 2X. I've been here almost 4 years here, which makes me kind of a gray beard at 2X. I was employee number 130 when I started, and we're over 1,000 people now here in less than 4 years. And so I've gotten to see the company grow up. I've been responsible for making a lot of the strategic decisions, and with our CEO and some of our stakeholders in our different offices as we grew up here, and part of that is investing in marketing. And so I'm glad we're having this conversation, and it's nice to be able to hash out a marketing budget with a CMO this year. So I'm excited for this.
It was a fun process. I did very much appreciate Dom's and your style in terms of kind of setting the stage in terms of the collective company's priorities, and then looking and thinking about the available resource we have and how do we want to invest those in an aligned way across the collective go-to-market engine. So that I appreciated that process for sure.
It's going to be one that I think. So
Okay.
I think that's going to be one that is going to go in the book of 2X is when you showed up to the first budgeting process, and I told you that I was starting you with zero budget, and the look on your face when I said that was like, oh God, another one of these finance guys, taking away all the marketing budget. But it was more of a let's start from zero and then build you up to where you need to be. But that's a face I'll remember for a long time, Lisa.
Well, it was interesting because I had what during the interview process and talking with Dom about what we needed to go and do and what the charter would be for the new CMO is kind of building this marketing function for a marketing organization that has scaled at such a rapid pace without marketing investment.
Right.
And then going into the first budget meeting and it being a zero-based budget conversation, like, okay, all right, so I'm going to have to roll up my sleeves and get to work here and translate what it is that we need to go and do in terms of what's needed. And then, of course, through that process, it's also recognizing that my first reaction, couldn't be these are the headcount I needed. It was more like, all right, well, this is the body of work that has to happen. And then recognizing that we should also be practicing what we preach. So we use our own model, right? And that our own model is very much these flexible marketing as a service operating model. And so it really isn't about this is headcount I need. It's more about capabilities I need and when I would need it throughout the year to kind of support the business strategy. So it was certainly an interesting way to start the discussion. I appreciated it for sure. Now that we've kind of gotten through that first process of setting the marketing budget, how often do you want updates on, how we're spending that budget, the rate that we're spending it, the performance and impact of that budget? How often and how would you like me to communicate with you?
Yeah, to me, I've always sort of grown up that shorter timeframes increase agility, and now there's a trade-off there, right? There's, in some cases, manpower, effort that goes into that. So I think monthly is kind of the standard, but where possible and where it's mostly automated, I actually prefer weekly reporting. And thinking through the monthly cadence, like, we're going to go into 2025, and I assume that there's not much value in a January report because, we shouldn't be that far off of where we thought we were going to be, sitting here in December, what happens in January and maybe not even February. And then you think about the back end, like whatever report I get in December, I'm not going to be able to act on. And November, I'm probably not going to be either. And so if you're doing a monthly cadence, you're really getting like 8 shots at, assessing and, maybe, course correcting over the course of a year. And, if you think about, now, there's no real value in January because we are where we said we were going to be. And February, maybe there's a little bit. And like maybe by March, you're seeing a slight variance somewhere, but it's not material enough to really act upon. But there might be a trend starting, and you might be getting into like April or May before you see the problem, and then you haven't even started acting on it yet. And so if I understand a lot of times that weekly can be burdensome, and hopefully we can put the systems and the key data sets in place that maybe we can get to that cadence. But going on a weekly cadence, you get 40 or 50 shots at creating real action versus maybe like the 6 that I sort of just laid out. And so obviously you can't create an operational burden that is just strangling on the business, right? Like I can't have you with 4 data analysts just totally dedicated to making me happy. I get that. But hopefully we can find the right middle ground of creating enough data that we can take action on early enough, but not totally strangling your team either.
Yeah. Well, I guess in the spirit of that, now that we have kind of shaped what that budget should look like, what the spend should look like, and the rate of that spend, and even when you think about within that collective budget, where those dollars get invested and the nature of those, right? What are those that are inflexible, let's say contractual commitments to events? Obviously, they're likely not going to surprise us unless we find ourselves in yet another pandemic, but let's just hope that doesn't happen. But the other pieces can shift as the business evolves. And so when you think about those shifts and at what level would it make sense to raise a flag to you when there is a meaningful shift, and it could be around a new launch, for example, a launch of a new offering, or we talked a little bit about a PR, a media event that could likely be a lightning strike in the market that kind of creates attention for 2X. If any of the timing of that shifts that would be meaningful, what would be a meaningful level that would kind of raise a flag that I should share it with you, even in between those planned communication events?
Yeah, I think the point that you hit on there, and I love that you brought this in, is timing. I think everything's relative, right? Like our P&L from a marketing perspective is much different than a sales force, right? And so everything's relative, and you can call it 10% or something, but timing is so important in this whole thing. I've worked with so many marketers that I give them a budget, and let's just say it's $1 million and it's spread, evenly over 12 months. They think that they have $1 million account now, and they can just draw from that whenever they want to. And, things happen in the business and performance happens, and we might have missed our revenue in Q1, and I got to find a way to claw that back so that we maintain our profitability numbers. And the unspent marketing budget might be where I go for that. And I think I've had some marketers in my past that haven't understood that. Like, you gave me $1 million, I'm going to spend $1 million, and it might happen all in December. And so having that rigor and cadence is is super important, and levels of materiality. I think that's just something that you and I will kind of figure out as we work together, and you'll find out that there's some things that like, please don't bother me with this, and there's some things that like I really appreciate you bringing that to the table, and we'll figure that out together. But I'm so appreciative of the timing rigor that you're bringing to this conversation.
So the advice I guess I would offer from that to the other marketers that might be listening to this conversation is at least ask your CFO for what would be a material shift, either in amount or timing, and then make sure that you have a firm enough handle on your overall spend so that you can actually raise that flag at a time where you can do something with it. I love that you mentioned about how many marketers tend to show up with, they get a budget dollar, whether that's 1 million, 10 million, 100 million, and they think that that's something that they can spend it whenever. And they might even squirrel it away for the things that they don't expect later in the year. But what I've learned in some ways, sometimes the hard way, as business needs shift, is that it does matter that you have a plan for how you're going to spend it, when you're going to spend it, the rate you're going to spend it, and then be able to not just track that, but be able to forecast whether or not you are going to actually spend at that rate. And be a good partner to the CFO to say, I see this component is delaying and it's shifting. Am I able to accommodate that delay? If not, what other changes do we need to make collectively as a company from an operating expense perspective that would allow for these shifts to happen? For example, I don't know a CMO that's worked in an organization where some planned product or offering was supposed to go to market and launch globally on a certain day, and the product house misses that launch date, and suddenly this whole body of work that was going to be done, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars from a marketing standpoint, shifts from one quarter to another. And that shift can be so detrimental to a collective P&L. And it's not just the marketer that needs to be aware; it's the other stakeholders that need to understand their impact there.
That's the key point for me is understanding that there's all these other stakeholders at play. I'll give you an example from our past year. We were beating our profitability targets. Marketing had underspent because everybody kind of loads their budget in Q1, and that's a reality that I'm aware of, and they had underspent. Well, April came around, and one of our international locations, our benefits costs went up. Our health benefits costs went up like astronomically. In a way we're like, oh my God, I need to solve for this. Luckily, I had all these savings from Q1 and I was able to absorb that. But that doesn't work in the I have $1 million piggy bank model. Like, and ideally we're having those conversations. We're a little, we've historically been a little lean. And so I'm sort of managing a lot of this stuff on the fly. But those are the conversations that we have amongst all the other stakeholders, hopefully in the future of, there's competing priorities, and then sometimes if you haven't spent your budget, it's going to get allocated somewhere else.
Yeah, and as a CMO, really at the end of the day, my first job as a business leader, the second job is really the keeper of the marketing investments, making sure that we invest those in a way that support the business. And so I'm going to understand if those things happen, but I also need to be able to articulate what happens if those dollars aren't available and I can't execute that strategy and what those implications are. And so you have to argue and understand your role as business leader, but you also have to run marketing like a business, which then brings me to my next point. And I do want to move us out of spreadsheets. And I think all marketers at some point in time should get out of PowerPoints and spreadsheets for their collective plan management. Certainly the budget updates can be provided to you in a spreadsheet so that it aligns with all of your other documents. But those spreadsheets and the versioning of those spreadsheets can become difficult when you're managing the execution of the plan. And so we're going to move into a performance management platform for us that will be Planful, but other marketers might use a number of other tools to do that. And that platform will enable me to actually take and manage the budget, but also have it directly connect to the marketing plan. So, let's say there's an amount that I expect to spend in Q1. I should be able to link to those buckets of dollars, what it is I'm actually going to spend that money on. And then the third component of that same platform is, okay, well, did we spend it on the thing? Did we spend the amount we thought we were going to spend on that thing? Did we spend it on the timing? And oh, by the way, now that we did the thing, how did that thing perform? The ability to have that in one place as a marketing leader is super helpful. But I am aware that I can extend visibility to that view to a CFO. I can send it to you, but I don't know the level of detail you'd like to see. So maybe you only want me to give you the spreadsheet updates as it relates to the budget, or do you want to see how those investments, where those investments went, and at what level you'd like?
I'm hands-on. I love seeing the detail. I love being self-service so that I can go in and see things at any given time. I love if you're open to that. Like I know some people, myself included, sometimes would be like, "Ooh, I don't want to let other people if my work is a work in progress or it's not a finished product that I'm ready for people to be digesting."
Right.
I know, some scariness around that, but being in finance and being in a CFO role that started with 130 people when I came in, like there's a roll up your sleeves kind of nature that has to that you have to run the business. And so I love just being able to see the data, having the data available, and B, there's a little bit of education that I think there's for me to go in and be able to see how you think about the business, how you think about marketing, how you think about allocating marketing across digital channels and events and brand stuff, which gives us finance guys all the heebie-jeebies a little bit. But just seeing how you think about that, I think there's in all these CMO CFO conversations that I have, I feel a little bit greedy that it always sort of turns like, how does the CMO have to come to the CFO, and like how does the CMO have to think in a way that the CFO does, and there has to be a little bit of reciprocity there for this whole thing to work. And so I think being able to get in and see your systems and see how you plan things is super important for the both of us.
Right. Well, good. Now, as it relates to, how do I make sure, let's just transition into the planning, right? I now know what I believe the budget amounts will be and the timing of the budget funding. I certainly can connect them to our overarching strategic priorities, but I've got to translate it to an executable plan, so that, we're not guilty of random acts of marketing. And fleshing out that plan now, how do you, do you have any advice for how marketing can better understand and align with the company's financial goals, to ensure that the strategies, right, the plan that I actually go and design and to execute in 2025, do you have any advice for me on how I should, or other marketers, on how we should understand and align with the financial goals throughout the year so that, we can kind of reconcile them with the strategies and the marketing tactics that we plan on putting out?
Yeah, and I think you're very good at this. Have an intellectual curiosity about the financials of the business. Knowing that you're interested in the financial health of the business actually matters to me. I think I give a lot more trust and credence to people that are coming in and trying to understand how my my little kingdom over here helps the overall world that we're trying to run here. And ask the dumb questions. Like, don't be afraid to be seen as non-business savvy. Like, if they know I don't know what EBITDA means, then they're not going to trust me, or then I don't belong at the table. Like, I understand that most marketing folks probably aren't immersed in financial metrics as they grow up through their career. Like, it's just not something that is part of their day-to-day life. And so I'd advise any marketers to have that intellectual curiosity, learn about the financials, ask your CFO all the questions. Get to know the revenue model of the business inside and out. Like, that's what marketers are ultimately intended to drive, right? Is the top line. So know what that revenue model is. Understand all the key financials that I'm held to as a CFO. Like, the CFO is probably most often the conduit to the primary stakeholder of the business, and that that could be the CEO, that could be the board, that could be a PE firm. Like, we're probably the closest aligned to them in the executive team, maybe outside of a CEO if there's somebody above the CEO. But what matters to the CFO is probably what matters to the top of the totem pole. And so understanding that as a marketer, I think gets you a lot more credibility in the conversation if you're able to speak that language. And as you were kind of mentioning, like make the connections between what the marketing team is doing and how it affects the things that are most important to that top of the totem pole. And so, again, that being the greedy CFO, here's how the CMO likes to think about, or needs to think like a CFO. Again, I think it has to go the other way. Like invite the CFO to the marketing QBRs or the annual kickoffs or whatever, and have them present the financials to the marketing team in a way that the marketing team will understand them. And have them sit in as you guys go through, here's your strategic priorities for the year, and here's how you're planning on executing them. And here's the results that we think that we're going to get from them. And, here's the risks that might happen. Like, we might launch this new website and nobody, it doesn't convert any better, or, we might go after this, this CFO ICP and they might not be interested in our message, and like understand what the risks are and how you might pivot off of that, and see like the CFO being able to sit there and actually seeing that in action. I think, then builds up a lot of deposits in the bank for when, those things do go wrong, or, when you have to have a conversation of there might be additional investment needed somewhere. Having finance team sort of involved in that throughout the process, I think is helpful.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, I kind of on all the points that you've hit, I think one of the benefits of marketers getting out of PowerPoint budgets and plans and into some sort of centralized platform that enables to provide that visibility. It also enables the management of that in such a way that is nimble and flexible with the organization. And then as it relates to including the CFO, I've always really appreciated when I've had a CFO business partner or a finance business partner, and I could sit down and talk with them about not just what the financial goals were, but I could educate them on, all right, well, if these are collectively the goals for the organization, this is what I think marketing's role is in supporting or enabling those goals. And then walking through, all right, well, the mindset, or at least the strategy in terms of this is where we're going to invest our dollars to affect these measures. But these are the metrics that we're going to use operationally to manage the execution of marketing, and connecting those dots was always really, really helpful. I've had a few finance business partners that have showed up that way. I'm grateful to hear that you do the same thing as I build my marketing, function, right? That'll be great to have. You hit on, marketing's role certainly being, I guess you could say the driver, influencer, contributor, enabler of the top line. And certainly with that, there are the measures of success for the CMO. I'm curious, at the end of the day, when you look up and think back on the year, let's say 2024, what is like your personal measure of success as a CFO? I can guess on what that might be, but at the end of the day, if you felt like you had a thing that CFOs care about that's a measure of their effectiveness in their role, what would that be?
Yeah, so I think in a lot of the stuff is always, company and situation specific, right? Like 2X
Right.
is PE backed. And so, we're interested in the valuation of our business. And so that's ultimately, my North Star is the valuation of the business. And there's certain ways that you can measure that, whether that's, the EBITDA that you're driving, or, revenue, if you're fortunate to be valued on a revenue multiple. And so, if I'm looking at a North Star metric right now, for me, it's EBITDA. That's a valuation driver of the business. It means that we're driving a healthy business. If we're growing that, we're growing the cash flow of our business. And so ultimately, to me, that becomes that North Star metric. And what's nice about that is there's different things that drive that, right? Like top line, certainly a piece of that. Like that's sort of how I think we're growth minded business. We're in a hyper growth mode, which is a lot of fun. But that's the easiest way to EBITDA, right? Is growing that top line. And so that's the mindset that I have. That's why I was so excited to bring a CMO on and have that zero-based budgeting conversation, so that we can give you all the funds that you need to execute on that. But there's another side of that coin, where if we don't grow in the way that we're thinking, that there's other levers that I have at my disposal with costs or efficiencies, and that we can go up and down the P&L in ways that we can that ultimately I can hit my goal for the year. And so that profitability metric is the one that I'm most held to in my role in the executive team.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that, by the way. I don't know that I necessarily ever asked one of my CFOs that in the past. I think I made an assumption that I knew what that would be, but it was always super helpful to know it. Speaking of metrics and measures of success, marketers love metrics. We have a million of them. And by the way, most of them are operational. Many of them have been referred to as vanity metrics that a non-marketer would never care about, right? So thinking about brand awareness and brand preference, or someone opened and clicked through an email, or how many people are on our website, that's certainly not tied to the financials of the company. From your perspective as a CFO, what KPIs would you consider most indicative of marketing's contribution to the company? And how
Yeah,
would you measure? Now you're investing in marketing. How would you measure the impact of that investment?
yeah, ultimately, to me, there's top line growth there, right? But I could go through alphabet soup, CAC and LTV and ROI and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of people probably know all of those metrics. To me, what I think is important and how I look at it at 2X is I want to see those metrics improving, but I'm not crazy about focusing on a marketing attribution to that. I think you can get so wrapped up and it all becomes like Excel exercises of like, how do you allocate? Like I told you, I started in an agency, back in the Wild West days of e-commerce. And yeah, there was basically like first touch attribution, last touch attribution. And if there was anybody maybe that you trusted in the org to build a multi-touch attribution model that everybody agreed, of course, nobody agreed upon it. But like, yeah, those were the methodologies. And this is back in the day also, where like, nobody's ever going to buy anything off of a Facebook ad. Like that's insane. Don't spend money on social media. But yeah, attribution, I think, is it can be a fool's errand a lot. And yeah, then you're spending all these resources to build the attribution models, and you're probably guessing at it a lot of times. And yeah, then you're making decisions off of it. And if you're making decisions off of data that you're kind of guessing at, like I think it just creates a lot more problems than I love the ideal state of marketing attribution. I don't trust it. Or overall attribution. Like, in a
Right.
perfect world, of course, we would understand, like, what this campaign drove in sales, but it's such a complicated world now with, all the, especially, B2B, with all the places that people are going to research things. And I bought an FP&A tool recently that I've reached out to the founder and told him, like, listen, I ignored your sales reps. I went to your page. You have the product that I always thought should exist, and you buried the product demo under a form fill where, like, I'm not doing a form fill. And so there's so much complication in marketing that to really feel good about marketing attribution on metrics, I just don't know that I'll get there. And so what I'm going to look at for 2X is overall, metrics, and then just know that, marketing should be contributing to the growth of those. And if those metrics aren't growing, then we need to figure out, how we adjust off of that. But we ought to be looking at pipeline growth. Now, is it marketing generated pipeline growth? Is it, sales generated? Like, maybe we take a shot at it and get some guidance. But I'm much more interested in the overall pipeline growing rather than, who gets the credit for it. And so
Right.
that's look at this year.
That was one of the things that I appreciated the most when I joined the team. Had an opportunity to not just spend time with you, but also our CRO, Ryan. And my first conversation with him was very much I'm not here to take credit for things. Like at the end of the day, I have zero interest in trying to do marketing source or influenced revenue or pipeline, but I do want to make sure that I'm entrusted with investment dollars, right? And I'm going to invest those dollars in a way that will grow pipeline, that'll accelerate opportunities in the pipeline, and help us sell more faster. And so in doing that, I asked Ryan, I was like, what do you think we should do together, and which metrics will matter? How will you judge whether or not you got that the marketing investment actually impacted your team's ability to sell more and sell it faster? And we came to the agreement that we thought that the right place to focus on was opportunity creation, and having substantial, significant enough opportunities being created when they needed to be created based on our sales velocity to ensure proper pipeline coverage to hit our revenue targets. And in his mind, he thought, if we start investing or scaling our marketing, that we should see a lift in opportunity creation. And then, depending on how we invest those marketing dollars, some of those dollars absolutely are going into, high value, high touch experiences with those larger accounts, where they might already have an opportunity in the pipeline, but we want to, do our best to accelerate those. And then finally, there'll be a portion of the marketing dollars that is focused on enabling the sales organization to cross-sell and upsell. And so that will have an impact on NRR. And so we looked at opportunity creation, velocity, and NRR. And if we were working together, if our teams were working together and doing this the right way, we should see a lift in all three of those. And we thought, we would come to you, and certainly didn't anticipate this conversation, being out of order. But we thought if we showed up together, bringing those metrics together and then being able to connect the dots in terms of who did what to support those lifts and whether or not we're, hitting the targets that we have across those, that we would share the responsibility of that piece. And I
I love
love
that.
that was the best possible start to this role.
That's great. And in a past life, that's what I lived on, was volume, velocity, and quality of the pipeline. And that's how we measure the marketing and sales impact together. And now what becomes a little bit tough is if those metrics go red, like, whose throat are you going to choke? And where are you pulling back some of that investment? And I think we work through that together and figure out what we do about that. And again, in that ideal world where you have all the attribution lined up beautifully, like you can target that kind of stuff. But I think even worse is making those decisions off of data that you don't believe in, and then you're just throwing darts at a wall blindly, and that don't help anybody either.
I think that's where attribution models come into play. And so it's less about taking credit for things and more about holding investments accountable. So where I think, the fool's errand for a CMO, bringing forward, marketing source and influence based on some complicated attribution model, is oftentimes viewed as that person's trying to take credit for sales. And we know that that's not. In a B2B environment, at some point in time, they're talking to a human. They're likely talking to a sales rep to close the deal. But those salespeople, those customers are likely interacting with lots of marketing investments along the way. And neither can really claim this is entirely mine, right? There are things I can do as a marketer that I can invest in that could undermine a salesperson's ability to close a deal, just as though I can invest those dollars that can actually support a salesperson closing the deal. And so the credit thing should just be taken off the table. But where the infrastructure and the advancements in technology allows us to have a little bit more reliable attribution models, that's to hold things accountable. So if I spend, let's just say, $250,000 on an event, and we exhibit at the event, we speak at the event, we host this roundtable of CMOs and CFOs at this event, and through it, if over a period of time, and let's say 1-2 quarters later, we did not actually either create opportunities, or we didn't have any opportunities that were influenced, meaning accelerated, or were helped close as a result of that investment, I want to come back to that investment and say, should we be doing it again? And if we do it again, should we be doing it at that level? Should we use the same approach to that? That's where attribution comes in, is I could start holding the things accountable, but it's not about taking credit. Like, at no point in time am I ever going to show up in a conversation with Ryan and say, that sale was because of this marketing thing. But I can sure as heck say, hey, Ryan, and the sales team, we talked about these series of events, and we did have a conversation about how much of our spend we were placing on events. And these 3 did not appear to have an impact on your team's ability to sell more faster. I want to hold those accountable. We're likely not going to do those things again, so that we can invest in maybe other strategies that could help us achieve those goals. And as long as Ryan and sales and me and my marketing organization, as long as we understand that that's how attribution can be used, we're good to go. But that's how that's where I would leverage it.
Yeah. And I love you bringing the proactive accountability to the table. Yeah, we have not gone through a second budget process yet, but I don't expect you're going to come back to me next year and say, "Hey, Brandon, I want less budget than you gave me last year." That hasn't happened in my career yet. I don't expect them to happen next year. And so, part of that, I think, conversation as we go into the next thing, yeah, you bring in, yeah, for lack of a better metaphor, like, you being the dog that brings the dead bunny to the back steps. I'm like, hey, look what I brought you. Yeah, here's my sacrifice of the thing that didn't work. Like, I love that because not everything that marketing does is going to work. And so I love that proactive accountability, and let's shed the things that didn't go so well, and then that gives me a little more confidence to invest in the future.
Yeah. And by the way, it's some of the things that are required to support an attribution model that would allow me to bring the dead bunny and sacrifice that bunny is, closed loop feedback reporting. It's making sure that we are capturing the data as it relates to an opportunity and a close one sale. And this is why we do need to have both marketing and sales capturing the data so we can make smart decisions like that next year. I don't know that I've ever been in a situation where I proactively showed up during a budget process, said I want less money, because I don't know that I've ever worked for a company that had less aggressive growth goals going into the next year. But I can offer that I will bring with it, here's the investment strategy, and that might look very different next year than it does this year. And if those things are aligned with the business goals, then that should reconcile. But if they are not, I would fully expect someone saying, look, at the end of the day, while our revenue targets are increasing, our profitability targets, they are also more aggressive. And so you would not expect to have the same marketing budget, or we need to invest in these other things to be able to support the business. Then at least I can come forward and say, well, these are the things I can do with what you can give. Um, I just think that's the beauty of having a budget conversation that is a conversation rather than it just be a, dictate, and then the marketer shows up with, I want all the money, and not necessarily offering anything that they'll do differently. Um,
And I don't think these should be one-to-one conversations. Like, these
Right.
should be conversations that we're having at an executive table or a leadership table, and everybody, that's at that table should have, sort of a thought or a vision of what marketing should contribute, and hear what worked and hear what didn't work. And I think as a group, we should be making the allocation decisions on where investments go, not Brandon, sort of divvying out those dollars. And
Yeah.
I think that's lost my train of thought there a little bit, but yeah, ultimately, I think it shouldn't be a one-to-one conversation. It should be a business conversation, and we get together and we have here's what our 4 goals are for this year, and here's all the things that we have on the table to potentially hit those, and as a group we should be prioritizing those and stack ranking those, and trying to figure out what gives us the greatest chance of success. Like, it shouldn't be a CFO making that unilaterally. I don't want that responsibility, and having that all on myself. And so I think we've achieved that at 2X, and that's how I think we should continue to have these conversations.
Well, that's one of the things that I appreciate the most through this first process with you, is that you did show up. Yes, of course you did say, hey, look, this is what we have, and none of that includes any funding for marketing, and zero-based budget. We need to go and build this up. But the other part of that conversation that you didn't give yourself credit for was, here are the things, based on our business goals and our priorities. These are the things that we should collectively talk about investing in, and then facilitate that conversation. You had like a very strong command of the levers that we could pull, and to what degree and in what order, and whether or not those levers were aligned to and then we just had a healthy discussion. I don't even know that I would call it a debate. It was more of a
Yeah.
discussion. Yeah, these things feel like they're aligned with these priorities, this North Star. And these things don't feel as aligned, or they feel secondary, or maybe perhaps misaligned. Let's not do these things, and let's get aligned on doing this set, pulling these levers, and then to what degree, based on the available resources, how do we actually allocate those resources? And I loved how everybody showed up through that. But it started with you having almost an inventory of the available assets and levers that we can pull,
Yep.
as the facilitator of that. So it was great.
Appreciate that.
I have one more question for you.
Okay.
And this is, handling challenges or, the hard things, right? So, what's the best way for a CMO to approach a CFO around something where maybe additional budget is needed, right? There's a difficult ask. And some of the examples here I could offer are, and this is assuming that the marketing plan and budget already baked, locked and loaded, and we're working in, moving towards execution, but something unexpected happens. As a former CMO of another organization where the top two competitors were acquired and merged, quite unexpectedly, something like that could force you to pivot. Another thing could be, a potential acquisition event. Another thing could be, hey, we recognize that there's this market of opportunity. We can bring this new offering to market, but that product launch wasn't built into the budget. Like, how should I approach you if additional resources are needed because I can't pivot within the bucket I already have?
Yeah, so there's a reality or secret that I don't know if I want to say out loud in front of my marketing friends, but there's almost always budget available. Right? Like, now it might be already spoken for or promised elsewhere. It's that conversation that I think you just laid out really eloquently of like, there's this whole inventory of stuff that we've committed budget to, and although we may have committed the budget, like the spend might not have happened yet, and so there's always money to be had somewhere. The key is getting your hands on it, and to be able to get your hands on it, like you have to build the case. And so data driven insights on why the additional money is needed and why can't it come from initiatives that you already have in flight. If there's this big shift that has happened, like does that make any of the things that you've already committed to less relevant or less impactful? And how does any additional money that I'm giving you address the new competitive dynamic that might exist by this external factor that has happened? And so bringing that clear line of thought makes it a lot easier for me. And again, I go back to how we run things at our org, like for the entire leadership team to execute that trade-off analysis of, hey, this pivot just happened and these external forces have just made our lives a lot more difficult. We have to battle that, and there might be additional dollars. Like I might have to take that from somewhere else. We might have to pull down our R&D budget and maybe not launch a product that we were thinking of this year, or
Yeah.
the new IT hire that we wanted for cybersecurity and a different location, like that might have to wait till next year. And so there's always money available. It's just that I think marketing has to come to the table with why they need to rise to the top of the ladder for that prioritization. And make no mistake about it, I know it's more difficult for marketers than it is for most. Like sales has a direct A to B relationship, right? On I spend this money, I get these dollars in the door. There's table finance. You need people to run the debits and credits, and IT. You need people to make sure that the Wi-Fi is up in the laptop. So like there's certain table stakes that just have to exist, and there's certain groups that just have a much clearer A to B relationship on return on investment. Marketing kind of sits in between those, and I think it's sort of the struggle that marketers have always had. But if something like this happens where there's a new competitive dynamic in play, I think it's incumbent on the marketers, for the sake of the organization, to bring the case to the table why that money is best spent in that direction.
Right. I realize that I've just been super selfish in this whole conversation. Is there anything you wish that anything that you wish you could know about a CMO, or anything you've always wanted to know about marketing that maybe I could answer for you, that maybe other CFOs that might somehow see this video might be interested in?
Yeah, I don't know, Lisa. It's I've learned so much from you already on how you approach our business, and what you've done with AI in our business already is incredible. And we've chatted offline. You've inspired me to sort of branch out and explore ways. And so I don't know that there's a direct question that I could ask of a CMO of and to get an answer on. But
Okay.
I appreciate everything you've brought to the table so far, and then I'm enjoying our time, and then looking forward to these next few years together.
I am too. I think, well, certainly I think this growth trajectory that we're on is just an exciting ride to be a part of, but this organization is really special, and I think 2025 is going to be amazing. So But I want to take some time and say thank you. I realize that, finance business partners are not necessarily always asked to have these conversations and recording and to share advice with the world. And so, as the marketer in this equation, thank you very much for it.
Hopefully I was able to bring some insights and value to the world here.
Very helpful advice. So thank you very much. And I guess now we can get started with our days.
All right. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Brian.